Yeah, it's especially the power of open source, because C# is open source and everyone can chime in and have their opinion heard, which makes the language much better than when it was closed source. It didn't evolve this fast, and it didn't evolve this in this modern way. That was possible just thanks to making it open source, and now it's just a completely new world.
Hey there, welcome to Beta Talks, the podcast. I'm Rick.
And I'm Oscar.
Oscar, today we are joined by Martin Zikmund, who is a Microsoft MVP and an open source contributor.
Welcome, Martin.
Welcome.
Hello, nice to meet you.
It's so good to have you on. So you're a Microsoft MVP and an open source contributor, and I think if you look online, we can see that you currently work as a freelancer for Uno. But I think you have quite the history working with and or for Uno, right?
Oh yeah. I started quite a long time ago as a just open source developer. It was actually at the time when Microsoft kind of sunsetted Windows Phone. They never actually killed it, but it went away. So I was a Windows
I'm not getting any
developer.
Updates anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It's just no updates. And I was a Windows Phone developer, or actually started as Windows Phone developer, then Windows app developer. And then they kind of destroyed that mobile part of the equation, which made me sad. And I wanted to find an alternative to it. So I looked into Xamarin Forms, and then I found Uno platform, which was kind of bringing that Windows development legacy into all the platforms in fully cross-platform manner. So that's where I started contributing, and then from that became kind of a career as well. So, yeah.
So there's been a lot of movement around UI on Windows, or maybe even cross-platform. But I mean, we've seen Windows Forms, we've seen XAML with WPF, and then we've seen a lot of different stuff, and then we have WinUI, and it's been so much that I kind of lost track a little bit.
Did you lose it? Yeah, like I sometimes hear Avalon, and I still know Universal Windows apps, and I do know that one XAML is not the other XAML.
Oh yeah,
true.
And when I started it, it was just Silverlight, right? No, it was first WPF.
Windows Forms, man. We started Windows Forms.
I know that's not XAML, right?
No, that's not XAML. But what are still valid current options? And then, of course, Uno being one of them.
Well, it's a rich history of Windows development, definitely. Like Windows Forms is the beginning of .NET Windows development, and it's the one that really stayed until now. And many of the companies are still doing Windows Forms, and they are doing it successfully, and it's working well. So Microsoft is kind of still behind backing Windows Forms development as a viable choice. And they even showed it on Microsoft Build that they are still investing in some improvements into Windows Forms, which is cool. I mean, for companies that are heavily invested in it and are doing successful development in Windows Forms, or continuing some support for legacy applications for Windows Forms, I think it's a fine choice. And there's not that much reason to change to something else unless you need more vivid and rich user interface, which Windows Forms cannot give you that much. But like it can be upgraded to .NET 9 even. So why not continue with Windows Forms? But of course, if you are doing something new, then you want to go with something more modern, and then you have Windows Presentation Foundation (WPF), which still works, still supported, and it has been getting some updates recently. So it's a fine choice as well. But for the more modern approaches, I think then there is WinUI, or actually there was UWP, which has been kind of sidelined in favor of WinUI, which is now the recommended approach. So Microsoft recommends WPF and WinUI for new development, and for like modern applications that should be performant and look great, then WinUI is the best choice, I think. So that's for desktop development on Windows.
Yeah, and then as soon as we start moving towards mobile app development, then it's a whole different ball game, right? Because we have, I need to think about this.
But that's what this
Xamarin
calls,
Forms,
right?
and then-
It's the multi-device, because Forms was fine as long as you were pixel perfect, and then we got WPF because we wanted to disconnect the background thread, basically. So you got it like modern design, but like at that moment, like 2000, what is it? 12 till 15, like this exploded, and everyone had a device in their pocket, and we needed to deploy into app stores. And I really liked. Did you like? I really liked the Windows Phone development cycle. It was so Visual Studio F5.
yes.
10 minutes later, I have something. And after that, it became more complex, and I somehow I still don't understand why did it need to become that complex.
Yeah, indeed. Like even the user interface on Windows Phone was super simple and easy to understand for the user, and it was clean and minimalistic. And that was a good thing actually. For many people, it was like decluttering of the UI, and it actually Windows Phone was the one that started the movement from to bring from the realistic surfaces on buttons and stuff like that to more minimalistic and digital surfaces that now are everywhere, like on Android, Metro Design, as well as on iOS. You can see it's been minimalized to look more digital and more simple. So I think that Windows Phone was what started it originally.
Yeah, and like the movement against it almost from other platforms was like because it was so constrained and so like every app looked the same and whatever. In the end, that's now the argument to be native. Like if someone is discussing, yeah, but I want the native controls, I want that, and it's exactly the opposite argument that we were having back then, I guess. It failed. We went all over the place. We were trying to push web into store apps.
We are still doing that, right?
We're still doing, and like PWAs, and then Apple starts killing that, and
And now we have Blazor applications that run in your mobile app.
yes, it's
And again, there I don't necessarily know when to choose which.
well that's the hardest part. But they all seem to have their position, and they all seem to have settled and are a viable option. Like what distincts the current options? Like for you, Martin. Like what when would you do that? Also bringing the native story, maybe.
Like I think that the good thing is that there is option for every developer in general. Like if you are a web developer, you have options to bring your application to mobile devices as if they were native. They feel kind of native. They are not completely native, but the user is not able to tell the difference, and that's good. And you have access to all the APIs on the device, so you can make the application more integrated into the system as well. So that's a good thing. The advantage of native applications is usually that the performance is better, and you can really use the metal more efficiently, and that's especially visible when you see like on Windows. Microsoft is now pushing in some places web applications instead of native, which is to great dissatisfaction of the user. For example, the Outlook web app now, like it's called Outlook, but it's actually Outlook web application, but on the desktop. And it's just not feature paired with the original Outlook, and it's buggy, and it's slow, and it's sluggish, and it's not great experience. So, like having native is better.
Yeah, it's an awesome example because I think it also says something about, is it designed as that native? Like Outlook is also biased because we're used to a UI that you cannot fully do in web. If you would rethink it, it might be fine. Like I don't like that, like a new version. I don't like the hybrid version. Like even the normal Outlook now brings in all kinds of snap-ins. But I actually completely removed that. I'm now doing it full in a browser because that feels fully native web, and somehow it's also quicker, and it's lighter for my machine. So I went just over. But somewhere like when you get into the hybrid it's a bit of that and a bit of that, it always feels there's always something to complain about, like at least.
Yeah, there are rough edges, I guess.
So from a
Like
maintenance perspective, I can imagine that, right?
That pushing out the web is so much easier than
It
versions.
is,
Yeah,
but
even inside a company, that's true. So,
But something really simple. Sometimes I have appointments that I want to copy, and just holding control and dragging the appointment just drags the appointment. It doesn't create a copy anymore, and that it's something really small. But those are the things that you're lacking now in the new Outlook.
yeah. Yeah, but it's like they try to. It's about like lifting and shifting, right? They try to port the UX to a service that's not made for that, for application. And I think for these kind of frameworks, right? Like you have two perspectives. On one, you go automatically into you need higher performance, so you would pick this. But on the other side, you also have the development team working on it. Like, what are they comfortable with, and what is that part, or where do you need to connect it to? How does your pipeline look like? Because if you do this from a business where you're building other software, you might have a different preference because you're used to HTML or you're used to XAML anyway. Or I think we will have a fight till eternity in what's the best choice where.
Probably, and if we don't, then something new will come along, and that will start fighting for what's the best solution, right? So,
Right.
in all of this complexity, where does Uno platform come in? Because it allows you to build, I think, both native apps and web, but also desktop, and it allows you to do a lot of things, right? So, could you maybe explain in short what it is Uno platform sets out to do?
Okay. Well, I think a good way to kind of explain where it stands in the like abstraction stack is if you look at Xamarin Forms or MAUI now, which is a competition to Uno platform. They are providing a XAML layer as well as XAML layer for UI and C# for development. And you can build your cross-platform application for mobile targets plus desktop on Windows. So that's what they offer. And Uno platform is on the same level of abstraction. Like the common misunderstanding is that Uno platform is on top of MAUI, but that's not true. We are on top of .NET directly, so it's the same layer of abstraction as MAUI. But we are offering the same set of offerings like XAML and C#, but on more targets. So it's mobile, that's Android and iOS. And then we have desktop, which is Windows and Linux and Mac OS. And we are also supporting Mac Catalyst. And we are also supporting the web via WebAssembly. So we have like the full support of all the different targets that you can imagine. So this gives you more choice. But you are still building against the familiar XAML syntax and using C#, or you can even switch XAML for C# markup if you want to. So it's a wide choice of options that you can utilize. And overall, you as a developer have more flexibility and you can target anything you want in a very efficient and productive manner.
And then to top it all off, if I'm not mistaken, it's fully open source, right?
Yeah, it's fully open source and free to use. So like the whole platform itself, it's just a NuGet package. You install it or you start from our templates. We have a template wizard in Visual Studio and Rider and Visual Studio Code. So you can start with the template and just generate your basic application and start building on top of that. So that's a good thing. And maybe one more thing I didn't mention is that if you are an existing Windows developer coming from WinUI or UWP or even Windows Phone, the syntax, the XAML, is exactly the same that you are used to from Windows. So it's one-to-one parity of APIs. So all the classes, all the namespaces, all the methods, all the events, everything is the same as in Windows application. You are basically just writing a Windows app, but it runs everywhere. So that's a good proposition for existing teams of developers who are familiar with Windows. They just can take what they already know and run it everywhere without having to think about it.
Is it that far that you could almost do a drop in, like without changing anything, or is it just so familiar that you could develop in there?
No, it's actually most of the time it's kind of drop in. There are some like differences in terms of what some targets support. For example, there are APIs on Windows that you cannot run on mobile devices. Like there are APIs on Windows like mixed reality, which is not possible like to port to Android or iOS because they have completely different stack for that. So like there are those APIs which are not implemented for the specific target will give you a squiggle in Visual Studio that tells you that this API, you shouldn't call it on these specific targets because it's not supported there. But like the XAML layer, the controls, everything that you are used to, and most of the APIs in the WinRT layer, like storage and device sensors like accelerometer and these things, all this is cross-platform. So you shouldn't have to think about it most of the time, and only in the edge cases you will have to write platform-specific code if need be.
Cool. In your target, you mentioned quickly WebAssembly, but does that mean that you could build this and it becomes a web app?
Oh yeah, that's a fun thing. Like in that terms, we are kind of competitor to Blazor WebAssembly as well, because that allows you to build web applications in C# running in the browser. But compared to Blazor, you don't have to learn CSS and HTML. You are writing just XAML. So it's really that you don't have to learn any web technology at all, which is useful for many people, including me. I really don't know much of C# of HTML and CSS and JavaScript. So this is beneficial, definitely. And the cool thing is that most of the APIs, even the device APIs like sensors and file access, like file pickers, folder pickers, all that is included in WebAssembly as well. So you can even pick a folder on your local file system and then read the files inside that folder, access those files, write into those files, and it feels like a real application, even though it's running in a browser. So that's super powerful.
Now, it sounds like it's really, really complete, right? The ecosystems you support, the possibilities it has, but all of that open source. So is there a company specifically backing it? Do you have all of this running because of contributions you get from the project on GitHub?
Yeah, that's a common question, actually.
Yeah, I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, people are usually unwilling to bet onto something that's open source unless there is backing for it. So usually they are looking for either .NET Foundation backing, or that the project is directly Microsoft based, or
and it makes sense, right? Because at some point, if you're dependent on it, you want to be able to call someone for support.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're a company, and because you're investing, it's a platform. So it's not that it stops there, and that you can swap it out, because you are investing every hour you put into it after you start using it.
Yeah, exactly. And you want to make sure that it doesn't die a week after you start using it as well. So that's...
And company backing doesn't guarantee that.
No, that's true. Especially when that company is... I'm not going to say it.
No.
Yeah, so on that part, Uno Platform has started as an internal solution in a company called Inventive in Canada. They have used it. Actually, if I rewind a little bit more, Inventive in Canada was one of the main contractors of Microsoft to build Windows Phone applications for Windows Phone. And most of the built-in applications on Windows Phone were built by the same people who are now building Uno Platform. So that's a nice backstory as well. Many of those applications that were directly pre-installed were from Inventive. And they were building also applications for other clients, not just Microsoft. And they wanted to find a way to make it easier to build those applications just once instead of rebuilding for every single platform again and again. So they thought Xamarin Forms could be a solution, but then they had the different XAML syntax than on Windows. So they had to rewrite the UI anyways. So it was kind of inefficient. And then they came up with what was called Umbrella Framework, which then became Uno Platform. And that was the solution to bring the same XAML and the same API surface everywhere. So that's how Uno Platform started. And it was used many years successfully inside of the company to build applications for clients. And then it was open sourced on one of the builds, maybe 2018. I'm not completely sure right now. It was open sourced. Actually, that idea came from Scott Hanselman, who suggested it would be a nice project to be open source. So that's he was basically the one that came up with the potential that it could be a useful solution to everyone, not just the company itself. And then it became open source. And then it became also a separate company from Inventive because it was just getting bigger and bigger, and there were more clients coming in. And there is the backing for Uno Platform is from clients and bigger companies that want priority support for their issues or want to get their features implemented faster. So they can pay us for that support, and we will prioritize their issues and their bugs and their features in a more timely fashion. So that's one source of income for Uno Platform. Plus, we are now preparing some additional paid plugins that you can use with Uno Platform. For example, we have Figma plugin where you can install that into Figma and you can export your designs into XAML or C# markup directly from Figma, which is nice for designers especially. So that's the second source of income for Uno Platform.
It's actually, I think, a very smart way of doing this because it allows you to still keep your open source character, but also you found a way of letting that coexist with a way of getting a revenue-based income that you can help you run the company, right?
If you would fully try to commercialize this, work with licenses, then the competition is going to be hard because Microsoft is bringing out these tools and you'll just get them. And also with that, like we XAML and Forms came not from Microsoft, like that came from Mono side, of course. Did the whole Maui project and maybe the time that it took to port that over, do you think that it benefited the Uno platform? Because the discussion started again, I felt, like from the outside. I'm not fully into those platforms, but like there was years and years like, oh yeah, we have XAML and Forms. And at that moment, it's like, oh, I heard about Uno and I heard about some projects being alive again or alive and kicking all the time. But did you think you also, that moment of pause on their side or confusion about like what, like how's the support on Xamarin and whatever, really push some people towards Uno?
I think it's a kind of double-edged thing. We are happy to have competitors like Maui, like Avalonia. We like to have competition because that pushes us to do new things and we can inspire each other by what we do. So we know that that Maui is looking into our code base and we are also looking into their code base, and it's useful because there are good ideas that can be reused and shared, and that's the nature of open source, and that's of course a great thing. On the other hand, I think the fact they completely switched from Xamarin Forms in a breaking manner to Maui was not the best decision, because the ecosystem was there before and now it has to be restarted again. All the third-party libraries and everything need to be at least recompiled and rebuilt for Maui, and there is a lot of things missing. So that's one pain point that people were unhappy with. And secondly, like there is some learning curve for existing developers to switch to Maui and learn how .NET workloads for mobile work and everything. It's kind of, it's not a free transition or free migration. So definitely what we saw is that many teams were starting to look into alternatives like Uno Platform, like Avalonia and others, to see if there is something else they can migrate to. Because as they are anyway having to invest into migration to Maui, they can as well look into alternatives and pick what suits them the most. So there are definitely clients that came to us and switched from Xamarin Forms to Uno platform because they felt more comfortable with our offering than with Maui, or they found some features still missing in Maui, and they just preferred Uno platform in that way. So,
Yeah, but
I mean, yeah.
They were forced into making or needed to rethink that anyway, that investment. So yeah, I think it also gives a good charge into some redistribution there, and like also competitive angles. And because if you basically, once you go into a certain platform and that just evolves with you, even though it has missing features, it's hard to get out, right? It's
Yeah.
Well, what
It's
I think
true,
is what I think is interesting to see is that even though it's a competitive product for a service like Maui, Microsoft is also seems like it embracing Uno, because NuGet Package Explorer has been built by Uno, and now in NuGet you can just click the link, open in NuGet Package Explorer, and they're happily using the fact that that service is there and available. So is it kind of a love-hate relationship where you either how do you see that, Martin?
I think it's a fairly friendly relationship, actually. We have more contact with the Windows team than the .NET team, I guess, because we are based on the WinUI development, so we have more roots there. But in any case, we have friendly relationship with the team at Maui, like Maddie and David Ortonau and so on. So we are on friendly terms, and they are actually recommending people to check what's there, what's available, and don't force people to use Maui. And they definitely are happy to recommend alternatives in the open source as well. So it's a good relationship, and it is fair, I think, because Microsoft is not really committed to Maui that much. They don't have that much resources, I think, the team that they should have, at least, in my opinion. There should be more people on it working, and it's kind of understaffed. So it would be nice if Microsoft was more committed, and if they are not as committed to Maui as they should be, then it's fair for them to recommend alternatives.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, but it's not a commercial product, so therefore it also has its position next to the other open source and other offerings. I think it's somehow good. Like they made sure that there's something after also like merging with Mono, and that Xamarin didn't just, it was a write-off and everyone just stopped. They made sure that everyone using that stack or needing these kinds of solutions, there was something, and it's there. And indeed, like no matter who we talk to, and I never heard anyone, never had the feeling there was competition there. But from the outside, it does look that you're solving the exact same thing at the moment. There is but like I sometimes have that with now Maui and Blazor. It's like, why? But then you get into discussion, like, is the end result more important for the choice, or is it the development stack? Like, is it? I would prefer Blazor over Maui for a lot of solutions I do, but if I would do mobile, like mostly mobile, then of course you come from the other side.
I mean, the choice is also based on how you want your application to look, because, for example, in case of Maui, it's easier to make your application look native on iOS, native on Android, native on Windows, where it renders using native components, native controls directly, which means that your application will look more native to the users on that system, but it also means that you have less control over the visuals themselves. You cannot style them or template them freely. It's more limited. And we come from the other end, where we give you the full XAML styling and templating, so you can retemplate and restyle everything as you need. So you make your application on Windows look like an iOS application if you want to. But that choice means that it's easier to bring your company branding and make your application look the same on all systems. But it's maybe harder to, like, it's possible, but it's not as easy as on MAUI to make it look exactly platform specific on each target. So I think that's a give and take, and you can decide which is more suitable for your project, I guess.
Yeah. Like I was always confused about that discussion because like it depends on what kind of image your company has, what is expected, right? If you're a Coca-Cola, whatever, you expect it super branded, you designed your own UX there. But for anything smaller, it's like you just go with the flow, so I know exactly where the button will be if I'm navigating the app. And then you want the native experience more. But somehow over a certain size of your company or whatever, you expect it to be completely creative. And therefore you get also those choices in those frameworks, I guess. Yeah. And how is it, because that is also a discussion, because you also mentioned performance. And I always think straight away about games if I think about performance, because, and of course you have some other photographic apps or whatever with huge calculations. But how is Uno for that? Like, is it welcoming towards a certain level of those things, or is there a community building that?
Well, we have some developers that have built simple games with Uno platform, and we have integration for things like game control API, so you can connect Xbox controllers and use those to control your game. And those APIs are, again, cross-platform across all the targets that we support. So that's pretty nice. For the rendering side of things, you can use whatever you prefer. So, for example, monogame, you could combine monogame with Uno platform and render the game itself with monogame and then menus, for example, with Uno platform. It's easy to mix and match these things. So, like, it's not completely a game development framework, but it's possible to combine it with one. And so for 3D gaming, I guess Unity will be a better choice. But it's something actually that it was reported to us that it would be nice to have the option to bring Uno platform like interface UI into Unity as well. So there is an issue on GitHub for that. Just not yet getting that much support for us to look into it, but maybe in the future.
Yeah, there was also some storm going on in the Unity part, right? At some point, there was some shifting there with the license and.
That's true.
Oscar, do you know what time it is?
Is it time for a totally random question?
It is time for a totally random question.
Okay. This might be easy for you. Martin, if you had to choose one programming language to use for the rest of your life, which would it be and why?
Well, it's a very easy one. C#, of course.
Is it actually C#?
Yeah. I like the way it evolved over the years. I started using it like towards the beginning of my development career. I started on Pascal actually, but then switched to C# and I have been there ever since. So C# definitely, because it's type safe. Yeah. It's nice to look at. It's readable. It's everywhere, and it runs on everything. I think it's a good choice.
It's actually funny that you say that. It runs on everything and it looks nice. I saw a LinkedIn post a couple of weeks ago, and it was about .NET, and it was about the power of .NET 9 and the performance and all that kind of stuff. And I normally don't do this, but I went into the comment section. This was on LinkedIn.
The comment section in LinkedIn.
But this was it. There was so much crap being said about .NET that's true if you look 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But that is totally not true anymore at all. But people apparently don't know that it's now cross-platform, that you can start building with it for free, that you don't need any Microsoft technology besides having .NET on your machine to do so. But people really think that it's still that old sluggish Windows only enterprisey. But I don't understand. It has come so far.
It has a weird reputation still in a lot of places.
Yeah.
Well, I think language-wise, and of course you have the new languages, which can be awesome, right? The more competitors for C++ and stuff, and that are combining the power and the not the problem with the garbage collector if you real like real time performance and stuff. But with awesome modern language features. But I think .NET, or especially C#, of course, evolved so much. And every time I see new features, and it's most of the time it's like 12 new features, and 7 of them, like within weeks, they're my default toolkit.
Yep.
Because they solve stuff.
Yep.
And somehow the language doesn't feel weird. Of course, if you throw everything we did everywhere, like if you put the two types of link mixed in one file, you get a bit nauseous. But if you move slowly to newer syntax here and there, like it's clean. We solved most of the nullability problem. I really like it.
Yeah.
Did you look at the some of the new features coming out in .NET 9 now, Martin?
Oh yeah, I did, definitely. But it's usually hard to. You have to take the time to learn the new things and kind of force yourself to use them, to have them become second nature while you're developing and use them automatically. But once you do, it's super cool because that gives you like a new power that you didn't have before. There is a way to write the thing verbose way, and now a more succinct and nice way. And
still somehow it describes, right? I think the power is in there. Like even though it gets smaller and there are shorthands for stuff, somehow if you didn't know it, you can still read it.
Record?
Yeah.
I mean, that was an awesome addition.
Yeah, like, but that's the whole language, right?
Yeah.
It's slowly becoming more. It feels more functional. You can write much more flow in there. While it was, of course, like we were writing different C# 20 years ago.
Oh yeah.
That's like I really like, and of course every new feature that's towards that kind of implementation more fluent, and you see the whole F# community is like, yeah, finally you get it too. They're really excited, and that's because it was always like it was based on that initiative, right? The F# community is also a really nice, tight, excited community.
Yep.
And I guess if you once you go there, there's no way back. But I still love C#, but I must admit that most of my code ends up looking more and more like F# when I'm done.
Well, what do you think is the best new feature that they added in .NET 9 or in C#? What is it, 13 now?
That's 13, yeah?
It's 13, right?
I must say, I haven't taken the time yet to dive fully into the last round, like the primary constructors and stuff, and some of the changes that we had record before that already. I really like, but I haven't looked yet. I've seen some initiatives coming by, but...
Did you, Martin?
I'm not completely sure if that feature that I think about is going to be in the next C# or not. It's like a numeric type, like a numeric interface to be able to write generic code with numbers, whatever their numeric type is. So int, double, whatever. You just write it once, and it's generic for any number type. So I'm not sure if that's already like passed into C#, the upcoming C# release or not. But that would be very cool because now you have to write overloads for every single different numeric type, and that's getting annoying. So that would be a fine addition if it was possible.
I think there was some work there done because I also saw some some really large integer type now being introduced for ridiculous numbers. Like I think they're doing something in the numerics indeed. But I don't know. But the nice thing is also like you definitely have seen this proposal coming by. Like also the community is sharing that. They're having the discussion in the open. I love always the Torgensen talks and stuff, like going into and the why and like all the questions you have, like, yeah, but what in this case? And they thought about freaking everything. It's so nice to see that.
It's quite impressive.
Yeah, maybe means I'm a total geek for saying this, but like I really like seeing those things.
But that's how it works, right?
That's why we're here.
That's why we're here. Completely true.
Yeah, it's essentially the power of open source, because C# is open source and everyone can chime in and have their opinion heard, which makes the language much better than when it was closed source. It didn't evolve this fast, and it didn't evolve this in this modern way. That was possible just thanks to making it open source, and now it's just a completely new world. Which is
and this part, it's open source, but it's open sourced with a friendly community around it and some budget backing. I think that's why the .NET ecosystem is just continuing to grow. And I love that somewhere in like 2014-15, Microsoft really shifted, like with back then going towards core, really shifted into I don't know how they managed to get all those funds there, but like everything improved around it.
Yeah, I think it was a good step, a good choice, because we can all see the value that's in there right now. Martin, it's been a lot of fun. Is there anything that we haven't talked about yet that you really want to share, or anything that you would like to get back to?
Well, I can only say that we are preparing some very cool things in Uno platform. So I recommend you listeners to check out Uno platform's website and our Twitter or YouTube, because we'll be publishing some new things very soon.
Cool.
Maybe even before this gets published. So.
Then we'll definitely attach it to the episode.
Yeah, well, let's. Thanks for that addition. Thanks for being our guest. It was awesome talking to you, and I have the feeling we could do so for a couple of episodes more. So don't be surprised if I invite you somewhere in the future.
Yeah, thank you so
awesome.
much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Beta Talks, the podcast. Beta Talks is made possible by BetaBit Managed Software Development. See you next time.
Bye.